Hello everybody, welcome back to Killer Film Reviews. It has been some time since I've put out a video, at least a good week now I think. So I just wanted to give a quick review of The Mandalorian Season 3. I know that this review comes a little bit late, but I've got a bone or two to pick with Disney, and that starts with just the pacing of the series overall and the fact that Mando's role was really decreased throughout this season. It didn't feel like he was doing much of anything. And it was Bo-Katan mainly leading the show, which honestly I guess is fine for the most part, but maybe they should rename it to just Bo-Katan or something like that and give her own solo series or something. The whole pacing of the series felt alright for this season, but it felt like we were kind of all over the place for the first couple of episodes, to say the least. And where was Boba Fett? Apparently, I guess they never gave him the call for whatever reason. Don't even get me started on how in the book of Boba Fett, Mandalorian basically stole the spotlight along with Grogu. I think the whole dynamic of Grogu and Din Djarin is pretty good, but I think that the problem is that Grogu doesn't speak, except only little bits and pieces here and there. I guess they want to keep the character in an infantile state to garner more sales of Grogu toys, is kind of the gist of what I'm getting behind with them not having Grogu speak, except maybe a line or two if you really pay attention. The whole reclaiming, there's going to be spoilers in this a bit because this is my review of everything. I'm just doing this in one take. The whole series basically builds up to the reclamation of their planet through certain events. There's a villain which makes an appearance, of course, or a villain that you may be familiar with. What really stands out to me about this particular season is just the fact that we're having more development on what it is to actually be a Mandalorian, and you have like the two sides actually, like Bo-Katan's people and Mando's people, kind of intersect a bit in here. I'm not going to give away all the details because I want you to actually enjoy it. I think the main thing to be taken away from this whole season is the fact that some enemies just won't die, in a sense, and I feel like death should be, obviously that's a spoiler there, I do apologize, but obviously, if we're going to have a villain, and they die, you would think that they'd be gonzies, not coming back and coming back and coming back again. And that is essentially the problem with modern Star Wars, is that they get rid of some of the characters that people really like Darth Maul when he met his end, obviously, in a certain series. You'll find out if you pay attention, yada yada. Or they'll just keep bringing back certain characters like Moff Gideon, because they can't come up with any new original things, to go off of. That's kind of what I'm getting at here. It's this whole Disney Star Wars has been up and down and up and down and up and down. There's been some good moments, there's been some bad moments. Obviously, those who have seen the new ones have noticed that there's been a trend of kind of moving away from the original trilogy, or the original prequels, focusing on more of the newer trilogy characters, which is fine, but I feel like they should have developed the backstory of these sequel trilogy characters more than what they did. And now we're getting things all mixed up again, because we're going to have apparently a new Star Wars movie continuing on at the end of I think what was it, The Last Jedi? No, not The Last Jedi. It was The Last Skywalker, I believe is what it's called, episode 9, The Last Skywalker. Apparently there's going to be a quote-unquote episode 10, focusing on Rey and a new generation Jedi. it could be a so-so thing, I guess. I'm not too harsh on the new trilogy, but there were some things I didn't like. I'm not gonna be like, oh, this is all bad now because there's more representation, blah blah blah. No, it's fine to have representation of different groups in a franchise, but we don't want it to the point where we can't enjoy the film or TV series, you know. And obviously different groups out there, and as long as they're represented well enough, good enough. But also when we're including characters in the series, we need to develop a backstory behind the characters. Not just put them in and then just not have any backstory. Like, what's Finn's backstory? Why did Finn defect from stormtroopers? What was Finn's life as a kid? You know, stuff like that. Just like with the armorer in Mandalorian. What's the armorer's backstory? How was the armorer's life like? Why does the armor have spikes on her helmet? Because there was a speculation that the armorer was somehow spying for Moff Gideon. We didn't really see that in the finale. Not giving too much away there, but the whole state of Star Wars is a colossal mess right now because we got this Ahsoka series, which is taking place somewhere after Rebels, which is supposed to, I believe, fall in between the little gap between, if I'm remembering this correctly, between episode 6 and episode 7, I think. That's what makes sense. And then we got Mandalorian taking place between episode 6 and 7. Pretty much. So they're really trying to explore that area more now, which I like. Trying to remember if there was anything exploring between episode 3 and 4. I'm trying to remember. No, that was Obi-Wan Kenobi. That series kind of explored that area a little bit. But with all this time hopping, they're going to really need to give us some more explanations on the timeline eventually about what's really going on, you know, with all these different things. So. And I also hear there's going to be a new kids series set in the High Republic era, which I think should be decent for the young ones. As long as things are quote-unquote balanced, I don't have any issues with representation in any media. But if we oversaturate said media with representation, we forget that there's people that aren't the different nationalities, then we run the risk of forgetting what our audience is. Because you can only have so much representation in a property before it becomes to be too much. Is the point I'm trying to make. There has to be a proper balance to these things. Because without a proper balance, then you're going to get everything to go out of whack. I mean, do I not like the characters in the new trilogy? They're alright. My main gripe with the whole new sequel series 7, 8, and 9, you know, with the Star Wars, is the fact that the plot was all over the place and there wasn't consistency. The directors didn't communicate with each other. And that pretty much shows up throughout if you're paying attention. Like you don't even know who Snoke is unless you go looking around the comics or watch some Star Wars theory videos. I shouldn't have to do that. Why did Snoke suddenly appear? Why is Snoke significant? Is he supposed to be some clone of Emperor Palpatine, or what's his deal? You know, those are the kind of questions you don't know the answers to unless you go buying the comics or whatever. So I guess it's a whole push to get you to buy all the comics and stuff, you know, perhaps. I really don't know, but I think my main gripe with Mandalorian Season 3 is the fact that we're taking the focus off Mando, you know, Din Djarin, and putting it on other things, which is fine, but if the series is going to be Bo-Katan and her troops, you know, leading everything now, then maybe Bo-Katan should have her own series. I mean, Ahsoka's getting her own series, why not? I think it wouldn't be a bad idea. The point I am making is that there's only so many changes you can make to a source material before it becomes no longer the source material. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like we've had so many changes. Like the force healing thing wasn't a thing in the original trilogy. The Princess Leia flying through space wasn't a thing in the original trilogy. They put so many things in these films that don't make any sense, and then you look at them and you're like, what? If force healing is a thing, then why is Darth Vader looking all ragged? Why isn't Darth Vader all healed up now? If that's a thing, you know? I think the character of Darth Vader highlights something for the series overall, because if force healing was always meant to be a thing, then he should have been healed already and not be all messed up like he is. Honestly. But I honestly want to see Star Wars go in the direction of having their own what if series like Marvel did. Because I think it would be interesting to have that done outside of the comics. Like, what if Vader turned to the good side? Yada yada. Would he be going head to head against Thrawn, or what would be the deal? Would there be some mysterious new threat that showed up from the unknown regions? Honestly, I think the whole issue as it pertains to now is the fact that there isn't enough plot lines that make sense, in a sense, with the whole last three films. Honestly, if you wanted to fix a lot of the issues with Star Wars, you go back to Episode 8 with Last Jedi and you would explain more about why the most hopeful person in the galaxy, Luke Skywalker, suddenly turns into an angry hermit man that drinks green milk. Honestly, why does that become a thing? The only logical explanation that makes sense is that he was manipulated by some outside force. Possibly Snoke or Palpatine himself. I don't know. That's the thing, is that they need to explain things, and there needs to be actual heroes, and not just the destruction of everybody's favorite hero. You know what I mean? That's kind of what they did with the Last Jedi, was they destroyed who Luke Skywalker was and made him something completely different. I think they've kind of restored some of that back with their TV series, but they're going to have to really take their time to explain why the most optimistic person in Star Wars turns the most pessimistic person in Star Wars. They're going to have to really explain that one, because honestly, I would love to know. I don't believe it just happened overnight. It has to be built up to these things, you know? That's just kind of how I view it. I'm not going to say to hate on Kathleen Kennedy or any of the other Lucasfilm people, but I will say that they had a contributing role to why Star Wars is such a mess right now. You know, and that's the problem. It's a gigantic mess, and there's been no real fixing yet. Outside of maybe the whole new series was like Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett. Book of Boba Fett could have been a lot better if it was just focused on Boba Fett and not Mandalorian and Grogu suddenly popping up in the second half of it. But I get why they did that. They wanted to say, hey, here's what Mando is up to now. This is what he's doing. And that's alright, I guess, at the end of the day, if they want to do that. But ultimately, I think a lot of these characters we're going to find out are going to be put in some grand finale event, and then they're going to probably be killed off or something for some of them, because none of them make an appearance in that sequel trilogy. Either that, or it's going to be explained that they're hiding the whole time. They could have been doing something. I don't know. Point is you can't make all these changes to something that already exists, you know, and expect it to do well. Because if you disrespect the source material, it's not going to be great. And people aren't going to really like it when somebody messes with something, suddenly say, oh, this person's this and this person's that, yada yada. There's got to be some balance to all of it. Without balance, nobody's going to want to watch your film. I'm sorry. But if you find the balance like the Mario movie did, then you're going to do well. And Disney should really take a lesson from the Mario movie and not make anything else like Ant-Man Quantumania. And actually take time to develop good films and pay their VFX artists pretty well so that the VFX actually looks good. It doesn't look like crap, quite frankly. Because honestly, if you look at the more recent films put out by Disney, the VFX is looking bad because they're overworking the people there. And that's the thing, and that's why I disagree with the practice of pirating any sort of form of media, because I believe that you should support the film for not just the big corporate execs, but for the people that actually work on the film for countless hours, like the artists and the storyboard writers, and the VFX artists, and the director, and the actors, and the coaches that train the actors on how to wield the lightsaber. There's a lot of people that work on a film, and it's not just the actors and actresses. It's all the people behind the scenes too, and that's why you're seeing this big strike right now from all the late night shows, because the writers aren't getting treated with respect like they should, you know? I mean, Shakespeare, back in Shakespeare's day, he kind of treated people more fairly, compared to the people today. There's a lot that goes into a film is what I'm essentially saying, and best way to support a film is to actually see it in theaters and to actually go on maybe a night where it's on a discount or something. I'll watch it through streaming. The legit way, legit streaming, not any other third-party nonsense. Because if we don't support our films, we're not going to have any more films to enjoy. Because they're going to lose enough money to the point where they stop putting stuff out in theaters anymore. So, it is what it is. I try to maintain a fairly balanced viewpoint when it comes to reviewing films, but obviously I'm not going to be 100% right. So my final score for Mandalorian Season 3 was 7 out of 10, just because of the plot seemed a little bit all over the place at parts, and it kind of turned into Bo-Katan series towards the end. Hopefully Mandalorian Season 4 can be a lot better. I'm going to have to rewatch some parts of the Bad Batch before I put a review out on it, but it is what it is. It's worth watching it. Nothing bad, really, besides the plot lines being all over the place. I hope that you all enjoyed my little discussion on the current state of Star Wars and my little review of Mandalorian Season 3. See you next week in my next killer film review. Thank you so much for watching.